Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Resilience Pod, the podcast helping you become resilient in our world full of disruptions. You're here with me, your host, Rina Singh, and I am so grateful for you for tuning in today. Today, we're talking all about what it takes to be resilient, no surprises there, in our new normal world. And I'm with my next guest, who is a business resilience professional, has a wealth of experiences in an array of sectors, is an active panelist, an amazing speaker, a fellow Women in Resilience committee member, and what I like to call the queen of statistics. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming my next guest, Ratna Pawan from India. Hi, Ratna. How are you doing?
I'm great, Rina. Thank you so much. And thanks for the wonderful introduction.
You are welcome. Really glad to have you on. So let's just get straight into it. How would you sum up the year that was 2020?
Wow, a great first question, really. Okay, so the hero, actually the villain of the 2020 script, as we all know, was the COVID-19 pandemic. That has reminded the world of its fragility. It wreaked havoc across the world, killing 2.5 million people as of early 2021 and counting, and will always be known as the most significant singular global disruption since the World War II, right?
Wow.
With health, economic, political, and security implications that will keep it bearing its teeth for years to come. It completely reshaped the world as we knew it, with widespread lockdowns, deaths, migrant crisis, devastating families and communities, and disrupting economies and political dynamics across the world. The economic recession triggered by the global pandemic and the oil price war surpassed even the 2008 financial crisis.
Wow.
Record unemployment figures were noted. Only in America, 6.6 million people filed claims for unemployment as early as April 2020, according to the US Department of Labor. The disproportionate economic impact of COVID-19 on low-income earners and women has caused them to fall only further behind. However, this year will not only be known for COVID-19, but a myriad other events and disasters that somehow wanted to compete head-on for mind space with the pandemic. And here's why I think. We started the year 2020 hearing about the Australian bushfires, which, as per the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, burnt more than 46 million acres of land, incidentally, roughly the area of Syria. In May 2020, we all know that the killing of an African American by a white police officer prompted widespread protests and riots, not only in USA, but almost all parts or all major cities of the world, with calls for racial justice reaching absolutely new heights that we had not seen earlier. In India, we saw two major super cyclones in the year. So again, unprecedented. We saw the Amphan and Nisarg, further challenging the environments of people who were desperately trying to work from home. A weird locust infestation impacted 23 countries as of April 2020, created panic and threatened food stocks and supply. It began sometime in June 2019, if I remember, and was labeled as the worst locust attack in 27 years. Also, the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo in April 2020 again was touted by the CDC as the second largest and second deadliest Ebola attack. In August, if you remember, there was a massive explosion at Beirut port, killing at least 190 people. And these are only some of them. There were obviously many more such incidents in 2020 that people will always remember. Some of the interesting world events also happened, like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, quitting the royal family. Brexit happened. Finally, after 3 years of multiple deliberations, the United Kingdom officially left the European Union in 2020. In November 2020, we saw Joe Biden winning the US elections. Of course, again, there was other reasons for remembering 2020 as the year where we saw a huge surge in work from home and anywhere, a global reskilling and learning epidemic of sorts, a significant uptick of people reporting mental depression and issues primarily triggered by the social isolation and the related uncertainties, a rise in the gig economy, incidentally, Rina, as well, to the extent where Gartner, in fact, estimates that by 2025, gig economies will account for almost 30 to 40% of the workforce. So it's been one of the busiest year in our living memory. Let me end by a quote by Ryan Reynolds that I had read somewhere and seemed to really sum it up. Any kind of crisis is good, he said. It just wakes you up. And boy, are we really wide awake right now.
Wow. I mean, guys, I said to you in my introduction, she is the queen of statistics. And well, there you go. I don't think anybody could have summed up the year 2020 better than you. And wow, as you were saying these, I was just like, oh my God, what the hell? So amazing that you have all these insights. And I think it's really important for us to reflect on that and because this is what's going to help us become a bit more resilient in the new normal. But before we get into that, there's a question that I would love to ask you and to know more about is, no doubts that 2020 has been hard because you've mentioned all the things that have been going on in the world, but it has been particularly hard for women. And a lot of the associations are with the pandemic, right? COVID-19. And my question to you is COVID-19 threatening to undo decades worth of gains for women's work?
Wow, an excellent question there, Rina. Well, honestly, according to me, the issue of lesser women in the workforce has always been a challenge, even prior to the pandemic, if you will. As how would you explain that as per 2019 research, and I'm just quoting some numbers here, women held only 28% of managerial positions globally in 2019, almost the same proportion as in 1995. Okay, women accounted for fewer and 7% of world leaders, 24% of politicians only, and 18% of CEOs globally, right? The country, India, that I live in, has the third lowest global representation of women managers, holding only 8% of management roles and were only 2% of CEOs. So that's even prior to the pandemic. And yes, sadly, the ardent strides towards gender diversity that were being made across the decades got only further impacted with the pandemic, reversing the trend and potentially even setting us back a couple of decades. Records and statistics, again, show that women left the workforce in record numbers amid the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the US Bureau of Labor, there were 2.2 million fewer women in the labor force in October 2020 versus October 2019.
Wow.
In April alone, women accounted for 55% of the almost 20 million jobs that were lost. A report by the Institute for Fiscal Studies in the UK noted that the women had 1.5 times more likely than the other men and the fathers in the family to have quit their jobs or lost it during the pandemic. Again, coming to India, a CMI data shows that 39.5% of women, Rina, that is almost 4 out of every 10 women from an already low base, lost their jobs in 2020. And we know why, right? Women are much more likely than men to work in these low-paying jobs in the unorganized sector or face-to-face jobs like domestic workers, casual laborers, or in very small-scale services like hairdressing and so on. So when lockdowns hit, almost all of them were either furloughed, laid off, made redundant. So, no surprises there. But again, Rina, it's just not about the job losses for women. 2020 saw some other very disturbing statistics around women. Significant increases were noted in reported cases of domestic violence and rape, since women were spending more time with their abusers at home. And sadly, I mean, that's where their abusers are. The United Nations entity for gender equality and empowerment of women even talked about this violence as a shadow pandemic in 2020. The largest support organization in the UK, in fact, reported a staggering 700% increase in calls in the month post the lockdown, or around 1/3 of women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence in the year by an intimate partner. Also, women had greater exposure to the virus due to the predominance in their frontline healthcare workforce. 80% of the nursing staff across the world are women. And what makes this even more ironical, Rina, is that 2020 actually marked 110 years of International Women's Day celebration. It actually marked 25th year of the Beijing Platform Action, which was formulated with the aim to bring about groundbreaking outcomes for gender equality. And more importantly, the pandemic, amongst its various other revelations, also diverged how countries that were led by women actually fared better during the pandemic. So there we go.
Wow, now that is a huge, immense an amount of data for us to kind of digest and really think about and reflect on this, because yes, we're women and we've got these challenges, but just hearing you say all these statistics and all these bad things, but then flipping it on this positive and saying, well, actually, those countries that are led by women have actually come out better is really, really interesting. And, we would love to know what you guys who are watching us or listening think about this, and to let us know if you've been affected by the pandemic, if you're a female, and how has that affected you as well. Because Ratna, there's a question I wanted to ask you following on from that is one study I read, and there's lots of things going around on the internet, is like women in this pandemic have been working from home, have had doubled their duties for domestic work as well inside their home. I'm wondering what you have thought about that, and if you felt that personally.
Oh, I definitely felt that personally. The pain is really hit very close because, in a country like India, we depend a lot on domestic help at home, because that's so easily available. And, if you're a working woman, a wife, a mother, a daughter-in-law, a daughter, all of those to put together, you're expecting some help with the cooking and the cleaning and the wiping. And suddenly all of that went away in March of 2020 when India announced its lockdown. So that was one hell of a phase where you had to, kind of do justice to work from home, where the lines between work and home kind of blurred because you were expected to be online for kind of larger number of hours. And you also had to do justice to your home. I mean, nothing was really going away. You were still feeling hungry. Your house was still getting dirty, so yeah, it was tough and if it's, I'm just one of them. So it was tough for every woman out there.
Yeah, really, really insightful. Thanks for your insights on that. And again, guys, and ladies, if you're watching or listening, please do reach out and comment on this video and let us know like some of the challenges you faced, because yes, we are part of some statistics, but it's nice to get a bit more in depth about it. Moving on though, and all this stuff is happening and we need to sort of move forward as well. We can't just be all doom and gloom, and we've got to be resilient because that's what we're all about. How can we prepare ourselves for what lies ahead and then be more resilient as a person?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to assimilate, Rina, according to me and according to the reports and trends that I have been reading a little bit more since 2020, is that in the coming years and decades, the world will face more intense global challenges, whether it's around climate change, whether it's around pandemics, disruptions from new technologies, the civic unrest, geopolitical events, financial crisis, and a whole lot of it. These challenges will continue to test the resilience and adaptability of countries, communities, and people. In fact, currently in India, we are battling the second phase of the pandemic as we speak, which is turning out to be more dangerous than the first wave that we saw in 2020. On a daily basis, India is recording, in fact, just today's statistics say that we've recorded 295,000 cases in the last 24 hours, only with 2,000 deaths. So whoever thought that COVID was only a 2020 thing, good luck with that. I read an EY report that points out that the geopolitics of COVID-19 will shape the global operating environment for countries and companies in 2021 and going beyond. The country that wins the vaccine race is likely to get a boost in geopolitical standing and reputation. And you can see that really happening across the globe. But every crisis brings with it learnings and changes. Much like the terrorist attacks of 9/11, I believe that the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to produce some changes that will be felt for years to come and change the way we have lived, worked, and governed domestically and internationally. I'd like to split my response here into different categories, really. Yep. On the professional front, Rina, enhancing resilience for organizations and professionals alike will entail a renewed approach to building enterprise resilience, moving from continuity to resilience, moving from preparedness to mitigation. There'll be a need to re-evaluate supply chains, which was recognized as the weakest link in 2020. There'll be a need to understand, most importantly, that 2020 was not an anomaly, and we will have to be prepared for multiple simultaneous crisis incidents, most likely coming without any prior information. Organizations will probably have to factor that immigration and travel restrictions may impact talent decisions. They'll have to prepare for a long-term hybrid work from home model, which we all know now is here to stay, with certain organizations even taking the call for permanent work from home for their staff, right? The next logical focus to work from home then is to enhance your cybersecurity and information security so that your data and information is kind of protected with a very large remote workforce. There'll be a pressure on hiring. So for professionals out there, doing more with less will be the mantra henceforth. So my advice to all professionals would be enhance your skills, multitask, and put yourself in a position where the organization really finds it difficult to let you go. Again, climate policy agendas are already back on the fray and being discussed, but that, according to me, is the lurking high impact risk that as risk professionals, we are all staring at. In summary, on the professional side of things, Rina, organizations and professionals will need to be prepared for a threat and risk landscape that will continue to remain fragile and evolving in the near to long term. But on the personal side of resilience, it's when I have been reading up on it, and there are very nice stories around. Over the years, it's been so reassuring and inspiring to see the high degrees of resilience exhibited by whole communities and countries that have constantly been battered by typhoons, floods, storms, earthquakes, acts of war, etc., all the while. Over 200, some more statistics coming your way, Rina, over 200 million people continue to be disrupted each year by disasters. 100 million people experience floods each year, and roughly 370 million live in earthquake-prone zones. A United Nations article in late 2019 indicated that over 40 years, the world's population has almost doubled to over 7.5 billion. But global exposure to tropical cyclones has almost tripled. For such people, resilience is not a choice. right?
Yeah.
Studies show that resilience is visible and effective where there's a will and spirit to fight back, really, the spirit to not succumb, and the spirit to really take everything on your chin, and acknowledging that is going to be the first step ahead.
Wow. All I can say is just wow. Like, what a really insightful and thought-provoking response covering the both professional side and the personal side. And when you said like some people don't have a choice but to be resilient, that kind of really hit me hard, because I feel like, you know, first world problems, we get really like hung up on things and we feel like we're not resilient. But actually, if we just take a moment to reflect back on all these other things that are going on with all these other people, it's actually, we need to be fortunate and take that gratitude and realize that we are actually more resilient than we think. So fantastic, thank you so much. I would love to sit here and ask you more questions and interview you the whole day, because you are really the queen of stats and it really puts things into perspective when you're sharing this. Before we close off, is there any final thoughts you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I would like to just share one quote that I had read by Plato, which said that only the dead have seen the end of war. So if crisis, struggles, adverse events, and so on are inevitable, our only defense is to sharpen our tools and get resilient. And that will be my only message that I'd leave with.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Guys, you will all agree, if you've been watching or listening to this, that this was a really thought-provoking podcast session. And, you know, we've got some insights on what it does take to be normal and resilient in our new normal. So please do bear that in mind. If you enjoyed this episode, then please don't forget to subscribe to the resiliencepod.com site, like us, share this, and let me and Ratna know like what your thoughts are. If you agree, disagree, if you've got more statistics, you are talking to the queen of stats, so you know, tell us what you think. We are always open for that. So guys, thank you, Ratna, for coming on the Resilience Pod, and to each and every one of you for tuning in today. Until next time, this is me, your host Rina, saying with Ratna Pawan, saying goodbye and keep on investing in your resilience.
Thank you, Rina.